7 yards. Whoa! Who is this kid?
Lester.
And we're recording? Fantastic. Buddy, I will tell you what, friends, family, and loved ones that's listening and watching this right now, this morning, I tested my testicular fortitude. I mean, I got it in. I got it into the level. Actually, you know what? Before we even get going, I'm just gonna let you know what this is. What was the volume? This is a volume clip from this morning.
Can't be done. Your dad's puking.
Hold on. Let's listen to that one more time.
Can't be done. Your dad's puking.
Yeah, that's how it went down this morning. So a good friend of mine that I connected with about 3 years ago was in town, and he's in town for like 2 weeks. And I've never really gotten an opportunity to like really train with him. I connected with him because I used to host a TV show on Spike TV called Playbook 360, and I would travel all over the country, and I would interview these influential high achievers, essentially kind of like this podcast, but we would go to different cities. You know, one time I went to Olympic fencing school, another time, and my instructor was the Olympic silver medalist for the United States of America, and then I went to essentially like snowboarding school, and my instructor was Kelly Clark, the best female snowboarder of all time. And on this particular trip, we went down to Boca Raton, Florida, and I went to train and interview this guy at I think the place was called Black Zillion. It was an MMA studio where all the pros in South Florida train. So he's in town, and I'll tell you his name here in a minute. But I meet him this morning at about 10 till 6 because we wanted to time it up. We met at McDonald's. We drove over to Torrey Pines High School in San Diego, California. It was about 40 degrees this morning, and we're walking down the trail to this really famous hill that I used to train at in the NFL off seasons with people like John Lynch, Justin Tuck, Junior Seau. So this is where champions were really forged. It's called Puke Hill. I would say it's probably, I don't know, what do you think? 300 meters? At least 300 meters, and at least, I would say the average grade got to be 30 plus. At least 30% incline, and it takes like at least a minute and a half if, and only if, you can run the entire time. But I ended up running one and walking one. But after I ran the first one with our guest, we're walking down, and my son comes with me and works out with me, usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5:30. And we ran the first one, and we're walking down, and my son started asking me, "Hey, Dad, where are we going to breakfast?" And I felt completely fine. I ran the first one, and I'm probably 5 minutes later, feeling okay, having conversations with our guest. Talking about business, talking about family, talking about being a dad. And as soon as my son asked me about food, my mouth started watering, but not in a good way. And I looked over at our guest, and I said, "You might want to record this because I think I'm going to lose it." And I puked, and then I walked another 15 yards and puked again. By the time I got back to the starting point, I had puked 6 times. And it was a righteous morning, so I'm a little physically drained because I'm not a cardio workout guy. I love to, if I'm trying to get cardio, I'm just going to lift weights faster. But I've been trying to get this guy on our podcast for a really long time. Just following his social media is so freaking inspiring, and it's fun too. So not only does it like challenge me, to be a better person, better husband, better dad, the athletic feats that he has on his Instagram inspire me to do more of that as well. He is a 3-time world champion. He is an NCAA All-American, Division I All-American, righteous father. He's an entrepreneur. He's a content creator, and really just a righteous human being, dude. This morning was fun, and I'm glad we did it before this show because it really, we get some stories to tell already this morning.
We do.
We showed the audio from it, but I'm going to have my boys Nico and Guy make a nice righteous edit and make me look like a superhero until the end. But Michael actually ran 2. So he ran 1. I came down and puked for half of the walk back, and then I hiked the second one, which was my game plan starting out. But Michael, 178 pounds of you?
185.
185. Sorry, dude.
85. Come on, man.
I was sleeping on your gains. 185 pounds. Scaled that thing twice. I bet you could have, if it came down to it, you had to put your nuts on the table. You could have made 3.
Yeah, I think I recover really well though. Like I told you that was people talk about rubber legs, and they talk about your legs being heavy and this kind of stuff. It's all kind of a formality or a figure of speech until in my past it always has been compared to today. Today was literally rubber legs. I told you I felt handicapped, like my legs literally were not working, like I was just gonna fall
it was
face
super
first.
muddy.
Super muddy. So it was, but I was starting to recover. But I did feel myself maybe getting to the point of looking like I was going to puke soon. So I think a third one would have put me over the edge.
I
But
was,
luckily, it was
I was
just
proud
you.
of myself. My
I
whole
was too.
goal was like to be able to make it to the top without walking. Like that's how aggressive this is. And I could not do cardio for a year and go out and run a really respectable 5K.
Yeah,
Cardio is natural for me.
It's hard to really put into words over these airwaves what it truly is.
Yeah.
The incline of it, not to mention the loss of footing because it's all muddy.
Mm-hmm.
Plus just the steady incline, but then the hump and then another hump and then another hump, and it keeps going up and up and up, and you think you're there and you're actually not.
No.
And it's really rough.
So where would you rank Puke Hill on just workload, intensity?
Well, it's like you said too, because as athletes, we and guys who like us who like to get out of our comfort zone and do all kinds of different types of workouts. I've done Pure Bar and I've done Puke Hill now. From Pure Bar to Puke Hill type of stuff. But Pure Bar is challenging in its own ways, but Puke Hill and the things that we do, it's like as we got done, my internal fitness clock told me you shouldn't be done. You only worked out for 30 minutes or whatever it was.
And it was really, if you really think about it, let's say maximum. We'll go back and look at the film. How long do you think we were running? Yeah, about 90 seconds. That's what I guessed.
Yeah.
I actually guessed 137, and Michael guessed 126.
Yeah.
So we'll go back and look at the film and
maybe
see exactly.
3 minutes of workload.
Yeah, like call it 3.5. Maybe your second one's a little bit slower. So call it 3.5 minutes of workouts. And I did 1.5 minutes, and then I walked the last one, so that was probably 5 minutes. So I did 6.5 minutes of work. Yours was more intense, but that's the most demanding thing I've ever done.
The internal clock said we should still be working out, but my physical body, felt like I had just worked out for 2 hours straight.
Yeah,
and it was very intense, mentally, physically. It was cool that we had the youngins there too. I mean, and that's one of the things too. It's not only does your son and his friend Matthew get to see us working out, but it's also what they don't realize is it's inspiring for us too, because we know we have to be, we want to be a role model. You want to be the shining light. So it helped that they were there. It helped that I had another world-class athlete. I mean, that first one where you and I went and we're shoulder to shoulder, rubbing elbows, encouraging each other because your legs aren't working, your feet aren't working.
I knew exactly when you were going to need some, like, come on, Michael, let's go dig in. And it was right before we probably only had about, 35, 40 yards to go. But it was, it got muddier. Yards. It got a little slippier. The incline right at the end was so brutal. Like you said, you literally started to not have control, not just of your footing, but of like your actual muscles.
The actual legs.
So much lactic acid.
I honestly can say I don't actually know what it was because I've never felt that feeling before. But
you want to go back though, don't you?
We should definitely
You're
go
so
back.
Sick. That's why I knew I was gonna love you, man.
It's like I don't know if it's muscles or if it's neurons firing or if it's nerves or it's
your central nervous system.
I had
is
no
like
idea what it was.
Completely under attack. Because you don't have enough air.
No.
So it's like a wicked combination of no air and massive lactic acid buildup, poor footing. It was a bad combo.
Yeah.
But in the best way possible. See, if you haven't, you have to. It's at Michael Chandler MMA.
Mike Chandler MMA.
Mike Chandler MMA on Instagram, and he shares like a lot of tips for getting healthier and recovery and stuff like that. But I think my favorite reason to follow just somebody like you is the entertainment. Like I saw like 2 weeks ago, he was doing back tucks. So no hands, doing a backflip, which is super impressive. Now, granted, I can do that too, so that didn't blow my skirt up. But the fact that you were holding like a 20, how big was that medicine ball?
That was like 18, 12,
Yeah.
somewhere between
Dude,
12,
he was
16, 18.
It was at least a dozen pounds med ball, and he was doing a back flip, standing in the same place, and you really made it pretty effortless. And it wasn't like one back flip. How many did you do in that
I think
video?
it was like 8 in a row. So it was like a slam and then a
That's
flip,
what it was. So he did a
slam,
med
flip.
ball slam, then a back tuck with the med ball in his hand, and then a slam and a back tuck. I know I don't want to say I know. I feel very confident that I could do the back tuck.
Mm-hmm.
I had stem cell in my back about 3 months ago. Worked really, really well. So I'm starting to trust my back again. So I know I can do a back flip. I don't have supreme confidence I can do it with a med ball, but I'm the type of person where I see somebody else do it, I'm like, if he can do it, I can do it.
Exactly. Well, yeah, if you haven't tried it, I mean, not to downplay the feat, but yeah, I mean, I don't think the med ball adds a ton of, if anything, it almost, no, actually, I don't know. We'll see.
It might.
We'll see.
It may
You need
add.
to do it just to find out.
Yeah, it may add a little bit of benefit in way of
It could help you with the
centrifugal-
assistance, yeah.
centrifugal force, because there's actually weight holding the spin.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the anchor to the axis.
Yeah.
All right, dude. So let's talk about how you grew up, man. I want to know like how you grew up. I want to know like what kind of parents you had. I want to know, dude. I want to know it all. Take me back.
I grew up in High Ridge, Missouri, a small town 40 minutes south of St. Louis. It's a little town. No, not like a little farm town, like it's, two stoplights or anything like that, because we're in the St. Louis suburbs, but the little area I grew up in was called High Ridge, Missouri. It's a small town, very blue collar, hardworking families. My mom was a secretary to my grandfather's business, and my dad has been a union carpenter for 30 years. So both of them very blue collar, and was me and my two brothers. I have two younger brothers, Eric and Matthew. We were all into sports, so we were always, whether it be football or baseball. We did a little karate, did a little.
Are they wicked athletes too?
Yeah, they were both good athletes. So my brother Matthew was wrestled in high school and college, and then my brother Eric played football in high school and college. So Eric got the size. He was a little bit bigger. Me and Matthew were the small guys. So as we were talking too, I was a small guy from a small town. You talk about being 108 pounds or whatever you were.
When I was a freshman.
When you were a freshman, I was about the same. I was about 102 pounds. And like I said, yeah, we grew up wrestling, football, that kind of stuff. Definitely not basketball. We weren't the tall guys, but I kind of found my stride in wrestling. So I knew I was going to be a small guy. I wasn't going to excel necessarily in football. I played football, but I knew I wasn't going to excel necessarily. So found the sport of wrestling and wrestled 112 pounds, 112, 135, 152. So I kind of grew.
What was your high school wrestling career like? Did people know that you were a big deal like back then, or were you kind of like, I was a little bit of a late bloomer. People always knew I was like a really good athlete, but people didn't start talking about like, oh, he could go pro until I was almost out of high school.
Really? Yeah, no, I mean, I was the sport of wrestling too it's so much smaller compared to football and basketball and baseball, the big sports,
Sure.
And I think that's something that has shaped me too. Whenever I competed for the love of the game, which we all do, but there is no lights and cameras, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
true. And it's not like there's like you're in your backyard and like, man, I'm gonna, unless it's like WWE.
yeah, like someday I'm gonna be playing at
Right.
MetLife Stadium.
yeah.
Like you could do that with football, but
Because
wrestling,
every little boy did that.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you did that just like
Mhm.
everybody else did. But then it just, you find your sport,
yeah,
and there's not like a Super Bowl for wrestling. I mean, there's the
Yeah.
Olympics and stuff.
there is, but that is so far and few between. And to be honest, we don't reward our wrestlers like
Right.
like the Eastern European countries do. Like if you're an Olympic medalist in Russia,
You're a
you're
millionaire.
set for life. You're a
Yeah.
millionaire. Like they take care of you. You can go into politics, do all that kind of stuff.
Right.
The U.S., you're just another guy who kind of got an Olympic medal, which is unfortunate.
It's and it's not just wrestling though.
Yeah.
I mean, because when I was coming out of college, I had an opportunity to possibly run pro track,
That's right.
and the offer was like like $30,000 plus room and board, and then obviously all the Nikes that you can run through. Because I was a decathlete in college, and I wasn't probably as successful as you were at wrestling. They were really more or less offering me that based upon like my potential, because I played football as my main deal and did track on the side, but I had a lot of a lot of potential, dude. I got cardio lungs still.
I know. I was actually. I'm like, when am I going to be able to clear my lungs real quick?
Nah, dude, this show is a little more relaxed than probably what you're used to, and it's funny because typically for podcasts, for most all guests, I'll like take a shower and do my hair.
That's what
but
we
but
talked
for
about.
This one, I'm like, you know what, dude? We got stories to tell, and I really just kind of want to hit record and tell the stories and make this one a little bit less about production and more about
Puke Hill.
The actual value and storytelling. Because, I mean, you got some good stories to tell about your life as well, but really for this one, I was like, dude, I actually really like this guy enough where I feel like we could just sit down and have a couch conversation. You know, just going and dropping the kids off at school this morning. So we went and ran this morning with my son and his friend and had a freaking awesome time. Then we came home, we fixed the kids breakfast. You know, Mike joined me to take the kids to school. So it almost kind of feels like, dude, you got Uncle Mike in here.
Cool, man.
It's story time. Story time with Uncle Mike.
Well, it's cool too because we, you know, all of us as friends or your fans, that we get to see it all on social media and that kind of stuff, and I love how authentic you are, and that you do encompass everything. On when you hit that record button, it's not like, hey, check me out, I'm on the cover of a magazine. It's like, no.
But in the backdrop of my podcast, I will put it on the wall.
Well, no, that's kind of like I saw this out of the corner of my eye. I saw, but of course,
you see what comprises my wall.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It's all family. Actually, the biggest picture on my wall is Dr. Dre.
That is true.
Then we got Muscle Fitness over there in the corner.
but you know, but it's cool to be able to do this experience from my point of view. To do this experience, like, heck yeah, let's go drop the kids off. Heck yeah, it's
cool, man.
Stop at the little deli that you go to. You know, so it's because that's where. You know, when we talk about my past, it's that blue collar mentality of just everyday normal life, because these days things can get so sensationalized and so big and so much cooler than they actually are, and the day-to-day grind is so much not about that. The day-to-day grind is just about, like when you talk about my Instagram, it's my workouts, but those workouts don't get put on camera without me doing the work. You have to do the work, and it's just the work.
You do it in such a, thank you for the comments. Dude, I really do try my best, because I've gotten stuck, you know, in a rut of thinking I need to show up like a certain way for people to like me. And that's not just like on Instagram, that's in life. You know, be it a TV show or a charity event or a business meeting. Like, I always have to fight the impulse before I meet somebody new. Like, even like this morning, you know, when you meet somebody that you want to create a friendship with, or you just want to like you, or, you know, I go read a school book to 20 third graders. Like, I want those little third graders to like me.
Yeah.
You know, like and I don't think it's like such a bad thing, but I haven't really talked a ton about this in the past, and it's really one of the main inspirations for me starting a podcast. Is I didn't want to talk about my struggles in 60-second clips on Instagram, because I think one of the most impactful, I don't think, let me speak some life into this, I know that one of the greatest impacts that this podcast has made has been allowing people to see behind the curtain of not just my life, but people like, you know, like your life. Dude, you're 3-time world champion, like best walking the planet. If anybody with anybody on 2 feet in your weight division, you're the baddest dude in the planet. Yeah. You know, like, think about that for a minute. That's righteous. Yeah. But that's not even the coolest part about you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, think about that. Like, drink that in for a minute. And sometimes I have to stop and acknowledge myself, like, dude, I was the best in the world at what I did. You know, one of the top, at the very worst, one of the top 32 in the world at what I did. But I didn't show everybody everything else behind the curtain. Like, you know, the days that I'm, you know, in a dark depression, or you know, I didn't share that I puked before every single NFL game because I thought people were going to find out I was a fake or a phony. So to be able to have conversations like we had earlier before we hit record, and we're going to get into some of that stuff, but like, I love alpha men that are willing to to take it there because they understand that vulnerability is really what inspires people.
Yeah.
You know,
It
winning
really is.
winning world titles doesn't inspire people. It catches their attention, like the person that you are and how you show up in the world and how you show up for your friends and your wife and your family and your son. Like that's really what inspires people because they see greatness, but they also see greatness in other facets of your life. And so that to me is like legacy. Your resume is your resume. Like
Yeah.
the person that you are when you're not getting trophies, that's your legacy.
Yeah. Well, in vulnerability, Puke Hill got me again.
Puke Hill got
That
him. Got another
That
one.
vulnerability is that key. The authenticity and the vulnerability is the key to really making an impact. You know, and I think because people just like we talked about, little 8-year-old Steve in the front yard talking about being able to play football someday in the NFL. Like that's cool, but that's a dream to so many people. You know,
Right.
like that sports or the actors and the movie stars and this and that. It's such a small group of people, but I'd much rather be remembered for being the father, for being the husband, for being the philanthropist, for being the guy who can make an impact and touch people's hearts. Because no offense, but kicking the football didn't really touch many people's hearts, right?
No, dude.
Me fighting people in a cage doesn't really touch hearts, but what does touch hearts is
grabs attention.
it
is
grabs
what it is.
attention, but the losses and how you come back from those losses, fighting through adversity, you know, standing up for what you believe in the face of adversity, in the face of opponents, and in the face of setbacks. That's what really captures the hearts and minds of people, and that's what's so cool about being able to do these kinds of things and surround yourself with people like yourself and realizing that. Because you're always waiting for the curtain to be pulled back, and of course there are bad people out there, and there's bad scenarios, and there's bad things happening. But you're always waiting for this curtain to be pulled back. Like, oh, I knew they weren't as nice as we thought they were. Or he wasn't as authentic as we thought he was. But the older you get, and the more you continue, like we talked about this too, being able to surround yourself with people, because they are out there. There's so many good people in this world.
They're hard to find.
And only the bad people get the press, you know, and it's so the more and more good people that you can continue to surround yourself with and surround yourself and wake up in the morning and say, I want to be like him, or I want to be like her. If you can see it, you can be it, you can achieve that. You can be that part of somebody that you want to be. And if I can be that to a couple people, I'm doing my job.
Dude,
you know?
you're going to do that to so many more. I mean, you've done that for me, and I would say we're in the same level of influence in the world, you know, in regards to how many people we can be seen by just by our pulling our phone out. Like that's incredible. Like that is such a blessing to be able to do that. I wanted to touch on this because this is something for me. I come from team sports, and yours is the furthest thing from a team sport. Like you're the only person in that cage. Like literally, it's a cage.
Yeah.
And there's no teammates to rely on. Sure, people support you in getting into the ring and getting into peak condition, you know, mentally and physically, but it's not a team sport. But being a punter, like you would think I'm from a team sport, being a punter and a kicker, that's a lonely job. Like you watch NFL sidelines, people are not chopping it up and giggling with the kicker and punter. It's not that they are exiled from the team. Well, on some teams they are. But, you know, I was very fortunate that, you know, I kind of like earned my respect in the weight room and with my work ethic. So I was part of the team, but I was so detached from the team because it's such a mental game being a kicker or a punter. And, you know, speak on the mentality and, you know, kind of the negotiations that go on in your head being such a, you know, on your own type of competitive sport.
Yeah, and that's the thing with wrestling as well. You know, I mean, essentially my whole competitive life has been one man versus another on a wrestling mat or now in a cage, you know. So there never has been, you know, and that is a very interesting parallel too, because kickers are they are essentially on their own. It's like you have the offense, you have the defense, and then you have the kicker who has such a vital job. And there's, you know, and I always talk about my favorite book is a book by Dr. Bob Rotella called How Champions Think. And I picked it up at an airport, and I read the first couple pages after I'd already bought it. I bought it strictly because of the title. Like, it got me.
Yeah,
and then it got me. But I read the first chapter. I'm like, shoot, this book's about golf. I hate golf. Like I literally despise the game of golf.
Right.
But then I realized the parallels between
Mentality.
a golfer and that couple seconds whenever he's got to swing, he or she has to swing the club. That couple seconds, and everything is in the mind.
Swing thoughts.
Yes.
Same thing for being a runner. I mean, it's
Exactly.
literally a swing.
Exactly. So it's cool to draw that parallel. But so for me, I think it always comes back to, and we touch on this all the time, is that your confidence comes from your preparation and the work that you put in. So I know without a shadow of a doubt that I've always done the most that I possibly could, and when you know that, you're not unstoppable, you're not unbeatable, but at least you know that at the end of the competition, at the end of the contest, you did your best and you gave your best. And I always tell myself, no matter what, you can take this whole sport away from me, this whole career away from me, you can take everything I have, but at the end of the day, my God still loves me, my family still loves me, and I still love me. And that's really all you really, really need, because when you boil everything down to the nuts and bolts of what life is about, that's the only thing that actually matters. So I can lose a belt, I could lose a little bit of money, I could lose my world ranking, I can lose these kinds of things, but those are all things that not only can those all be overcome and I can come back from those things, because I now have proven to myself that I can. I've lost 2 belts in my past. I've lost a lot of money in my past, because your money's not guaranteed a lot of the times. If you lose a fight, you're basically losing half your paycheck. I've been ranked top 1, 2, 3, 4 in the world, and I've lost those kinds of rankings, and now I'm back up there again, so I've lost it all. But by losing it all, I've gained it all, because I've been able to come back from those kinds of things. And not only is it a phenomenal, motivational, inspirational story, which can touch the hearts and minds of people, but it continues to give me that confidence. So when I step into that cage, I'm looking across the cage, and you hear the cage door close, chink, and okay, and you hear him go, it's got like a big, bar that locks it, and then stuff's about to get real, and then you hear the announcer, and you can hear the crowd, and you can feel the lights, you can feel the energy, you can feel that canvas under your feet. It's got a certain smell, so all of these things are also things that I use for my visualization, because I have to visualize stepping into that cage.
Swing thoughts.
Smelling the cage, feeling the atmosphere, hearing the crowd, feeling the sound waves around you, because there's a buzz. When you talk about a buzz, there's a buzz in there. And I've always been in big fights. I've always been main event, co-main event towards the end of the card. So they've already seen 10 fights before me, and they're all amped up. They're ready. Maybe they got a couple adult beverages in them. So it's like the intensity is ready to go, and it's really interesting too. When I was brand new, first got into the sport, I pretty much just bit down on my mouthpiece and ran 1,000 miles an hour and tried to break the guy in front of me. And
what was your first fight like? Like, as you're describing to me, like I'm closing my mind as Mike was talking and thinking about like stepping into a cage, because I've been in a cage like that, like before a fight or after a fight. I've been super fortunate to get some some access that not everybody gets. I've been in those cages before. They're not very big.
No, they're not.
They're not very big. And I remember, getting in there and standing in there by myself and imagining another person my size in that cage. There is nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Like, take me through mentally the first time you stepped into a cage to have like a real fight that people were going to watch. Like, not just like, well, let me try this on, in a private gym.
Yeah, I think.
Were you scared to death?
So I never really do get nervous, which is kind of weird,
Yeah. Count yourself blessed, dude.
I know. Like,
I have to talk myself off the ledge every single time I would play a game.
It's crazy, and that's why I don't know, because I don't want to say like, oh, I'm just uber overconfident, so I never get nervous. It's not that. It's more just like, I know I've prepared, and I think I've just done it so many times. But then again, you played Prop Warner football and then high school football and all that.
I played 179 pro games.
Yeah.
And I vomited before every single one of them but one. And that was the Super Bowl.
So
it was the best game I ever played.
Yeah, exactly. And I just don't know if it's – maybe sometimes you get into the routine and it's almost like it's one of your
so would you say
rituals.
You draw that elite level assuredness or confidence or swagger, or however you want to, whatever vernacular you want to use for it, would you say that was comprised primarily of your preparation and really kind of like knowing in your mind that you're ready?
Yeah, I think that, and I really don't think. I think I got to a certain point where I care if I lose because I don't want to lose. I hate losing,
Right.
but I can't care if I lose. You know, I think it's almost as if there's so much pressure on you that you don't feel any pressure at all. You know, there's almost so much riding on the line every single time I step in the cage, and I only get to do it every 6 months or so. And that was the hard part about going from wrestling, where I would wrestle 40 times in an 8-month season.
Mm-hmm.
I'd wrestle on a Wednesday and lose a duel, but I could get that win back on a Saturday at a tournament. 4 or 5 days later.
Right.
You know, if you
Short-term memory, that doesn't happen now.
Yeah,
Could be months in between your
months,
bouts.
you know, and that's the hard part about winning and losing. You know, you don't get another chance to prove yourself again, you know. But yeah, there's so much pressure and there's so much on the line every single time you step into the cage. You train months and months and months for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 15 minutes if it's not a championship fight. So there's so much pressure that there's almost not much pressure, which is kind of an interesting thought. But I think it's just, yeah, I'm prepared, but I'm not afraid to lose because I know God's got a plan for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes us as humans, our flesh takes over, our insecurities and all of these things that are not from God.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I know there's a plan for my life. And if it's for me to never fight again, I'm okay with that. I have to be okay with that. If it's for me to lose my next fight, my next 5 fights, that's part of it too. So I think I've gotten to the point where I know I'm not in control. I know I can't control it. The more I try to control it, the worse off I am. The further away I am from that flow state of just being in there, being present, and just being in a fist fight. You know, and that's life. Like you're in. You know, not to go
Dude,
like
it's
crazy
primal.
barbaric, but it's like
it is the most primal competitive sport there is. So that's why I say, like, you could be the best football player in the world or best rugby player or, to me, or CrossFit. You know, like people say, like, oh, he's the fittest man on planet Earth, the guy that wins CrossFit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Not in my opinion. The baddest dude on the planet is the world champion. It's the baddest dude on the planet.
Yeah, it's
granted, there's Navy SEALs, and I know those dudes are super hardcore too. But if you put a Navy SEAL, the baddest Navy SEAL of all time, in the cage with the world champion, he's gonna get chewed up in the same weight bracket. He's gonna get chewed up and spit out.
Yeah,
you know, you guys are the baddest dudes walking the earth.
Yeah, it is interesting too because it's it's cool to see how the sport has evolved. You know, it started out as just, you know, fighting people were fighting, and may the best fighter win. But now you see the way that I train. I don't train like a fighter. I train like an athlete. I legitimately
I
want
love
to
watching
be,
your training.
I
I get sick of people hitting the speed bag. I'm like, next video. You know, your stuff is like real life applicable athletic movements and training.
Yeah, I mean, I also understand too. I mean, I'm still in the prime of my career at 32 years old, and I think I still have a couple good years left of actually getting more athletic, actually getting more explosive, increasing my speed, increasing my strength. And that's, you know, hopefully that's the truth, but, you know, hopefully that actually happens. But I think I'm constantly just trying to become a better athlete. So it's cool to see the sport shift from, okay, let's just not just grab each other by the hair and punch each other.
Right.
I'm going to be a better athlete. I'm going to be a better cardio athlete, a better endurance athlete, also be extremely durable, and then also extremely flexible, and also extremely powerful and athletic. And it's interesting. It's going to be really cool when I'm done and I'm retired and we go to a fight together 10 years from now, 15 years from now. It's going to be interesting to see where the sport has come and see what these guys and gals look like. It's going to be cool.
The reason I ask this is really a self-serving question. I'll ask the first question first, and then I'm going to ask the question that I really want to ask. How much do you protect the people that you allow around you leading up, let's say 8 weeks out from the fight? Like, are you auditing the people that you spend your time with and the way that I'm sure that's the way that you're spending time, but do you audit the people that you allow to be around you leading up to a fight, you know, from a mental standpoint?
Yeah, it's actually pretty, because sometimes I check myself and really have to ask myself, like, Michael, are you a mean, judgmental harsh person,
Right.
because I
Or are
am
you
so.
protecting the dream?
Yeah, or is that just the way it is? The small circles make huge waves, and that's what I've always believed, because especially in a sport like mixed martial arts, it's not. I mean, in any sport, in any locker room, in any avenue, any organization, there's going to be the people who are doing things right, the people who are not doing things right, and then everyone in between. I've always been the guy who does things right, and I'm not afraid to admit it, and that's how I've always lived my life, and that doesn't make me any better or worse than the people who don't live their life right.
Makes you who you are.
It makes me who I am. So I'm not afraid to admit that and embrace that, because I was the guy who was, who went against the grain. I was the guy who wasn't doing things that the dudes were doing in college, and I got made fun of it or whatever. That's cool, but I wore it like a badge of honor. So in college, for me, the guys who didn't do the right things, I was like, I had a kind of a bad mentality too. Like I was very secure in who I was, but I was just like, whatever. I don't like those guys. I don't like a lot of guys. I'm not going to do what those guys are doing. So I only had like a couple, two or three really close guys in college. And then now in mixed martial arts, it's like, it's even more spread out. There's even more, it's even a bigger sport, if you will, obviously a lot bigger sport now, because now we're going mainstream. But, I always make sure I'm protecting what's going into my brain, into my heart, into my mind. And that is so much through the people that you surround yourself with, or what you're ingesting through podcasts and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. That's how I stay built up. So, I mean, I only have a few people in my life that I really talk to, which is pretty crazy,
Do you ever feel like that strains family relationships? The reason I ask that is because it strained mine.
Yeah.
Because when I feel like I really, like, the only way for me to get somewhere, and I'm not saying this is the fact, but in my mind, the only way for me to get somewhere that requires like massive amount of work is like I almost like hole up, and I don't want to say I discontinue communications, but I don't reach out and nurture relationships, and especially like family members, like I want to when I think about the person that I want to be when I wake up every day. Mm-hmm. I've noticed myself every time I pick a large goal that's going to require so much of me, I find myself almost kind of like holding up, and like instead of focusing out and creating joy and excitement and love and support and nurturing relationships, I find myself focusing in. It's effective because I achieve, but I want to find a balance to where like I can focus in and also focus out at the same time. I haven't found that balance yet.
Yeah, I think, and you have a couple of years on me now, and you have a lot more on your plate too when it comes to. I mean, you've been a father since you were 25 years old. We talked about, it's like now you have 5 kids. It's like you have a lot of things.
There's a long demand list.
Yeah, long demand list.
So I do a good job with my wife and my kids.
Which
not
is
as
the
good
most
as what I want to.
Which is the most important thing.
100%.
So I think that's what happens. We get more things, or we get more responsibilities.
More money, more
problems. So you get these things, and you have to cherish those things. And but just because you're focusing so much on this aspect of your life, and yes, you feel like you are, neglecting the other ones, doesn't mean you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing.
Right.
Even if most likely the people's opinion who are being neglected, if it's their opinion that they're being neglected, it's not necessarily your problem either. And that's the hard part too.
And the reason like I say that is I have such big dreams and aspirations for like what I want to create in the world and the impact that I want to have. And you look at people like Steve Jobs, and I know I'm like the furthest thing away from him. Like I take my kids to school every single day.
Yeah.
Most of the days I pick them up. I take my son to work out with me in the morning, 3 days a week at 5:30 in the morning. So like I know I'm not this, but I'm scared to death to be like Steve Jobs, where I'm on my deathbed and I have a laundry list of regrets. And if my family is anywhere on that list, I failed life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can bless all the humans in the world, but if you don't show up for your wife and you don't show up for your kids, to me, you're not a real man. Yeah. I know that sounds like selfish, but like that's our honor. That's not like a responsibility. That is like the greatest privilege as well, which leads me to a question of, dude, you're a freaking dad now.
I am a dad.
You know what I mean?
I
How's
am a
that?
dad.
How's that experience been for you?
That has changed everything, which is sorry, Puke Hill. It's been awesome. You know, it has given me a sense of worth and even confidence too. I love that I got thrust into parenthood, and it got almost like confidence bestowed upon me by having. As soon as I looked into my son's eyes, I immediately felt like I could just take the whole world and crush it. You know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm gonna have more, you know, or a lot more. I'm like, not
Dude,
like,
you hang
well,
around,
when you got five
hang around
kids,
here,
yeah.
it's either gonna do things. You're gonna be like, dude, I want a big family just like that, or it's freaking birth control.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly
mean?
right. You know, but so a little bit of a backstory. My wife has wanted to adopt a little boy ever since she was 15 years old, and about a year ago, actually a year and a half ago ish, we started talking about it. 2 years ago, we started talking about it, and I wasn't on board with it. Excuse me. I wasn't on board with it for just numerous different reasons. It wasn't sitting right on my heart. It wasn't exactly what I thought that I wanted. You know, we had kind of talked about it whenever we first got together, and I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely open to it. You know, maybe that was just for me to help continue our relationship. Sure. You know, but whenever it actually became real, and it was like, holy cow, a child coming into my life, and that I will be that child's father. And that to me, and even before I was a father, I've always known that becoming a father and being a father and a husband are the two greatest, like you said, privileges and honors and labels and titles and duties that you have on this earth. There is nothing greater that I will ever be called. I can be called world champion, all-American, cool, sexy, awesome, jacked.
Right.
But father, daddy, dad, that is the greatest thing that I will ever be called in my entire life. So, and I knew that kind of before it even happened. And then whenever we went through the process, we went through the laundry list of all the different background checks and paperwork and screenings and all that kind of stuff that we had to do. And then we got an email one day, you know, when I finally said, let's do this thing. You know, my wife had already started the process because she knew I was going to eventually warm up to it. And then we got an email one day that said, congratulations, you are eligible to adopt. And we looked at each other. We're like, oh my gosh, this is really awesome. I can't believe this. 6 minutes later, we got a phone call that said, congratulations, you're eligible to adopt. We don't really have much time because, by the way, there's this case down in Dallas, Texas that fits your preferences, your profile perfectly. Would you guys like to present? And we're like, we didn't even have a moment to enjoy the fact that, holy cow, at any time a case could be brought to us down the pipe. 6 minutes later, we got a phone call. No way. And we're like, okay, well, let's at least look at it. Let's look at a picture of the child. And he was just, I saw the picture, and I kid you not, and we talked about this. My eyes welled up with tears, and I said, that's my son. And 2 days later, we were on the phone with the birth mom. A day and a half after that, we were down in Dallas, Texas. We were down in Dallas, Texas for 3 weeks getting my son, which is just so cool. Awesome. His name's Hap Chandler. So it's cool, man. And that becoming a father has changed, because it's so funny that even our conversation would be like, oh man, you can't wait till you have kids, man. Trust me, it changes this. It's going to be this, but that. But it doesn't really, you can't really put it into words. You're like, because I've had so many people say that, you know, it's just wait till you have kids. It's this, it's that, it's whatever. And you don't quite know the actual impact that it's going to make until you hold another human being in your hands and you say, wow, this is mine. And every single heartbeat that he has moving forward is my responsibility. And every single thing that he thinks and the confidence that he has and his goals and aspirations, all of those are hinged upon how good of a job I do as a dad. And that's why it's so interesting too, being in the positions like we have and me fighting on national television or having opportunities like this, is every single day is another brushstroke on this masterpiece that I'm trying to paint, so that someday he can look at it and say, my dad is who he is to my peers, to what you will say about me, what the next guy will say about me, what his kids at school will say about me, and that's why my reputation is so important to me, and that's why the image that I can portray is so important to me, and I'm the same guy in the public eye as I am at home
Or Puke.
or Puke Hill. And yeah, it has changed me, and it is so cool. It's been the most ridiculous thing in my life where I'm just like, it's been such a crazy change. So,
Dude, the smile. And you should take this too. Granted, that smile is a smile that was a possibility, but when you see him smile the way he smiles on social media, you're generating that.
yeah.
And I think to speak on adopting a kid, because my wife and I spoke about it too. We always knew we wanted to have a big family, because I come from a bigger family, and my mom had 5 brothers and sisters, and just I love to be around people in general, and that was my first goal that I ever had when I was 14 years old. Lifetime goal was I wanted to be a dad. It hasn't happened for us. Not to say that it won't. We do want to have one more kid. I don't know if that's going to be Puke Hill. I don't know if that's going to be via adoption, or we're going to roll the dice and see if she can get that boy that she just so desperately wants. And I will not be disappointed if it's another girl. But talk about, because you're right, the way that you are on TV or social media or commercials or autograph signing is literally the same way that you were off camera when we shot that video. And I was like, man, dude, this guy's he's a real person. It's very, very rare to find people like you, or people how I try to show up as well, is just very congruent with who I say I am, is the way that I act. But I'm curious how other people are that are in your industry, because I know the industry that I'm in, and I know people on TV and social media and commercials, and then I have relationships with them in locker rooms, and it's not always congruent. So how is that salsa dance of trying to figure out who people really are, in your industry been for you?
Yeah, it's because mixed martial arts too is still very much in its infancy. 25 years. The UFC started in 1998, so we
just celebrated 100 in the NFL.
Exactly.
100.
So 3 times younger than the NFL is. More than that. 4 times.
Yeah. Puke Hill.
So essentially, it's still like the Wild Wild West. The managers there is no, the coolest thing about the NFL is don't you have to be an actual
you have to be
certified this, that, and the other thing, which is awesome.
They protect the athletes. Whereas mixed martial arts, any of you guys could be my manager,
right. Let's go do this thing, so it's like the Wild Wild West. It's becoming more and more mainstream. Now the UFC just got on ESPN, which is huge. Bellator's been on Spike TV. Now we're on Paramount Network, and I don't know how long that will last. Chances are they will just be becoming bigger and bigger.
Stacking. It's growing.
TV, yeah. So it's becoming mainstream, but it's still very much in its infancy, like the Wild Wild West. And it's so with that, you have to, number one, find the best people to surround yourself with, but also management, business relationships, those kinds of things.
And you're the CEO of all that. You don't have a governing body that filters people out.
Oh, no.
You are the filter.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's probably some stories of you making some wrong decisions and seeing goodness in somebody that probably didn't have your best interest in heart. Because it's happened to me, and people have been filtered for me.
Yeah.
And I've still been stung quite a few times.
Well, the good thing is, it's hard to think off the top of my head, but I really have been in some. I've been very fortunate to be in a lot of great situations.
That's why you're on this show, though. You know what I mean? You've had more wins than losses.
Yeah, and I think it's also too for me. My sponsors, and I have some of the best sponsors in the game. There's some of the best sponsors you could possibly have in mixed martial arts. I have them, and I don't just have them. I've had really good relationships with Monster Energy.
Well, let's give them a little love on it, man.
Well, Monster Energy. I've been with Monster Energy. I was the second athlete ever signed by Monster Energy. And I have a really great relationship with them. So I think I pride myself on having good relationships. So when a sponsor, it doesn't just cut me a check, or I don't just wear their logo. It's not a business transaction. They literally love me like family. I just had dinner with Toyota Escondido out here in Escondido, California.
Michael has his name plastered on the side
my
of the truck
gosh.
because our shoes were really muddy this morning. And I was like, man, like when I say muddy, I'm talking really
Real
muddy.
Caked on.
Yeah, like 5 times heavier than they were before you put them on. And I was like, man, I got red interior in my Range Rover. I'm like, man, this is going to suck. I'm going to have to go get my car washed today. And I was like, never mind. Welcome to Michael Chandler's, what is it, Toyota Tundra?
Toyota Tundra, yeah.
Compliments of Toyota of Escondido, and it's got his name and an American flag, which the American flag's a nice touch.
I know.
It's a nice
He
touch.
pulled up the first thing he said, man, that truck is American. I'm like,
and it's a
right.
Toyota, but Toyota's made here now.
Toyota's made it here now, yeah.
Well, it is American, dude. I
Exactly.
can put my stamp on that. Beforehand, I wouldn't have been able to say that, and I wouldn't be giving him a shout-out
Exactly.
on Steve Weatherford podcast. I'm not giving you any love, but if you're American, Toyota of Escondido.
Got you, baby.
So I had to throw my boots in the back of that pickup
Yeah,
truck.
couple nice couple pairs of muddy boots.
Yeah,
So that was cool.
You're welcome for the Puke Hill memento that you're going to take home with you too. Hey, don't worry about it, man. Our friends at Toyota of Escondido will clean that right up for you.
Yep. Sure.
And there we go. There's another video plug for you.
No,
dude, doesn't
but
Hans, the guy that Hans Molenkamp,
yeah,
is
do you
it
know
his
Hans?
name?
Yeah.
I don't know Hans. I'm good friends with Flex Lewis, and Flex
There you
Lewis
go.
is another signed athlete.
Yep.
Have you met him yet?
Flex?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, he's awesome.
Yeah.
I freaking love it. Have
Yeah.
you trained at the Dragon's Lair?
I've not trained there, but I've been there.
Yeah.
And his company, one of his companies, Arsenal Strength, he makes fitness equipment.
Mm-hmm.
They decked out my gym in Nashville. So
No
I've
way.
been friends with Flex now for a couple years, and,
Yeah.
and Hans,
Such a
So
good
Flex
dude.
is because me and Flex were kind of talking about Monster because he was like, I want to be the first bodybuilder sponsored by Monster, and
Yeah.
bam, we made it happen. I don't say
Yeah,
we.
dude, I gotta call Flex on the phone and
call
see
him.
how his English is, because if it's good enough, maybe we'll have him on the show.
It's pretty good. It's actually, I mean, it's really good.
I gotta check on him because I know it's starting to evolve. 3 years ago, when I was talking to him, I'm like, I can't even bring you on a TV show. People can't even read your lips, man. It's a cool accent,
Yeah,
but
it's really
I think
cool.
on a podcast, people want to be able to understand exactly what it is you're
no,
saying.
man, he's a sweetheart of a
Dude,
sweetheart of a
and he's a
person.
good dad too, man.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that, and I was actually really, really honored about 3 years ago. Like he had won like his 4th Mr. Olympia, and he called me like out of nowhere. I followed him on Instagram, and he followed me. But he DM'd me. He said, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you and get some advice." And he wanted to get advice on ways to grow a brand outside of his niche. Like
Wow.
your niche is fighting,
Yeah.
my niche was football, but now, I'm creating new niches, either, podcasting or parenthood or TV. I'm just, my life, I'm sharing my whole journey, and if
Yeah.
there's value in different facets of my life for people to live a bigger, better, more fulfilling, more financially wealthy life, then dude, I'll share it because I'm doing it anyway. I
Yeah.
might as well share the trip with people. But he reached out to me because he wanted to get advice on how to do that. And I was like really honored. I'm like, dude, that's really cool. Like the best in the world at 212 pounds or under. He's probably the best 212 bodybuilder that's ever lived. I mean, he's won like 8 of them in a row. And it was an honor. I was like, dude, that's so cool, man.
And it's
Thank
so
you.
cool. And there's such a lesson in that it doesn't matter who you are and how elite of whatever vocation you are, if you are willing to if you're willing to ask for help and humble yourself. I mean, because a lot of people will be like, nah, I'm not going to ask this other guy who's jacked and kind of in the same thing. No, ask. Like, don't.
That's why social media is so awesome.
Exactly, and be able to humble yourself and have the humility to ask questions and ask for help. And I think that's what, especially us as men, we get so caught up in, is that we always have to grind through it. We have to figure this out
Or we
on
have
our
to
own.
be the know-it-all.
Be the know-it-all, and that's what I've really done over this last year, is kind of realized that I need to continue to ask for help. I need to continue to, in order to evolve, I can't do it by myself either. Number one, I can't do it away from my relationship with God, and that's one thing I've also realized, that that's a side of my life that has struggled because I've been so busy. And you can be so busy. You can be so busy focusing on me. I have to accomplish. I have to fix this. I have to put out this fire. I have to do that. That you forget that it's actually not all dependent on you at all. And so it's just cool. And not only because I know Flex personally, but it's cool to see a guy at the top of his game be willing to say, "Hey, can we hop on a phone call? I just want to
Super
randomly
cool.
ask you a question.
Yeah,
I want
it was
I want
super cool for me.
your help," instead of like, just holding all your cards and trying to be macho man, which he's
And
about as
see-
close to a macho man as you can
I
be.
know, dude. He's 5'8" tall and 5'8" wide.
Yeah,
His
exactly.
arms are literally bigger than both of our waists. But one thing that I learned in 2018 is, and we had talked about it off camera a little bit, and 2018 was like a really tough year for me personally. It was a tough year for my marriage. My business did pretty good. It was a tough year for my relationship with my kids, but like most of all, it was a tough year. It was a season of growth for myself personally because, so much of my life I had spent on, creating this vessel of achievement. Either the performance of my body or the aesthetic of my body, or the performance of my business, or how my business actually looks, the aesthetic of my business. The aesthetic of my brand, like what's people's opinions of me. I spent so much of my life so focused on that, and I was so focused out, and I didn't spend any time focusing in to really kind of like constantly recalibrate during the different seasons. And I had to dig up and open up a couple boxes of things that I like compartmentalized and stowed away because they were too painful for me to deal with it. Like one of them being, like sexual abuse that happened when I was in 7th grade, and I never really dealt with that. I put it in a box, and I found the deepest corner of my mind, and I put it there. Same thing with like, just the relationship that I have with myself. And you were talking about, we're so caught up in the doing and the building and the achieving that as long as I was doing those things, I wasn't worried about, what I was suppressing or what I wasn't talking about. I wasn't open with anybody. Like nobody ever in my whole life has ever known that, I had like supreme anxiety before competitions or just anxiety in general. I never talked to people about depression. I never talked to people that I had substance abuse problems with, with alcohol. I mean, name something that's cool, and I've been addicted to it. Call it women, call it, alcohol, call it drugs, pain pills, like you name it. If it feels good, like I'm going to find a way to abuse it.
Yeah.
And coming from the sport that you're in, which is like, I say that football is like the ultimate man sport, but like I digress. I recalibrate. The sport that you're in, the industry that you're in, is the most alpha male sport because there's nowhere to hide. There's not a lot of room for vulnerability. There's not a lot of room for sensitivity. There's not a lot of room for feelings.
Yeah.
Like there's room for achievement and performance and doing. So being the way that you are, and talking to you, kind of seems like you were really pretty conscious and self-aware starting from a pretty young age. How has navigating, such a macho industry and having such an alpha job, how have you navigated that and still stayed really consistent and congruent and true to yourself in your values and the vulnerability that you show, the authenticity that you show, the generosity that you show? Because those aren't like super prevalent in your industry, and they're definitely not super prevalent for men in general. Like being sensitive and emotional is not something that, it's cool to show.
Yeah.
But even you talking about holding your son for the first time, looking in his eyes and just crying, or looking at the picture, not even holding him, looking at a picture and just crying. Like men like you don't talk about that. So how has that dance been for you, staying true to yourself and still, being a badass?
Yeah. I think, and it's like you said, there is no room for emotion. There is no room for sensitivity there is no room for any of that kind of stuff in the fight, in the cage, in the sparring sessions, in the gym. But I realized early on that in the sport of mixed martial arts, or even just me in the sport of mixed martial arts, I was going to be two different people. When I am in the cage, and when I am, because people always say that, hey, when did that switch flip? When does it happen? Is it the cage door closes when they announce you? And I'm like, I don't quite know. I know as soon as I step into that cage, it's like it's
already
on.
activated.
And it's already activated, and it's there. It's kind of it's when I'm back there and I'm getting warmed up, and I'm really just visualizing beating somebody limb from limb, which like sounds barbaric, but also at the same time, that's also the same guy who just got done like kissing and crying and praying with his wife and son, like at the hotel room a couple hours before. It's like, but I realized early on that I think it's a gift to be able to be okay that I do have this alter ego, and that when I watch myself fight, I'm excited about that guy. I'm proud of that guy. Proud of that competitor. But when I watch it, I'm glad that I'm sitting on the couch with my wife or like hanging out with my family.
Where does that gift come from? You
I
call
don't.
it a gift.
Yeah, and I don't know, and I think I really should explore it deeper and take it all from a 30,000 foot view and kind of dissect it and look at it, because, I don't know if I was just born with it. I don't know if it was the way that I was raised. Like we said, I wasn't raised to be the greatest achiever. I wasn't raised to be.
Were you raised in a Christian home?
I was raised in a Christian home, but I wasn't raised.
There's your answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, it's a gift from God, and it can only. And I don't want to tell you your life.
Yeah.
But I know from my personal experience and my relationship with God that I've been given so many things in the last year after that season of growth.
Yeah.
That are gifts. The same
Yeah.
way that you say it's a gift, it is a gift to be able to 100% be authentic to yourself and the relationship that you have with yourself, but then also 100% be authentic when nobody's around. Because it's the things like that's the difference. Because I've been around a lot of champions in my life. Like I've had conversations like this before, like never in this moment, never with you, but people that have done what you've done or done what I've done and had conversations, it all comes back to like why you're doing it. And if why you're doing it is authentic to you and you're not doing it for validation outside of yourself, like that's true happiness, because you can continue to go on and achieve. And if you fail, it's so much easier to get back off the mat and keep going, because the reason that you're doing it isn't for the validation from somebody else. Like you're doing it because you're playing for an audience of one.
Yeah.
Like you're playing for yourself or you're playing for God.
Yeah.
Or maybe a combination of the both. Because if you can go to sleep every night, I tell myself this, if I can go to sleep tonight and be proud of the person that I am, I know God's going to be proud of me.
Oh, big time.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm motivated against myself.
Yeah.
And that's why, I talk about this morning, like typically you would think like puking in front of your son would be weakness.
Oh.
But the way that I look at it is, dude, I'm 36 years old. There's no reason that I need to be training till I vomit. But I've got an 11-year-old that has hopes and dreams and aspirations for his life. I don't want to tell him what to do to be a champion in his life, regardless if that's in sports or piano or academics. I want to show him. I want to show him that I'm willing to take myself to the most uncomfortable place that my body revolts against me.
Yep. Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So, like, I'm excited for you to be able to get to the point where, because you're already there right now, but get to the point where you can actually start training with your son.
Oh gosh.
So he can see, like, how much of a freak you are, not athletically, but mentally.
Yeah. Yeah. I've already pictured it, man. I'm excited about it. I'm excited. Like no matter what he chooses, if he, I mean, he's gonna be big. He's gonna be much bigger than I am, So I know that. So he's going to be able to have the opportunity to play basketball or football or, which I had the opportunity. I'll be fine. I mean, we just saw Julian Edelman
I was
MVP.
gonna say, you could have played football.
I could have,
too.
I could have.
You're a
I think it
stud.
was just I didn't come from a football community, either. So it was tough. So wrestling was my thing. But whatever he decides to do, like I could seriously see myself being the 40-something-year-old dude with cleats and cutters on, like running around the field, like.
Dude, you're built like Julian Edelman. You guys are like the
like
same
with my
frame.
my son throwing passes to me like 10 years
he's
from
gonna
now.
be like 6'5". You're gonna be running the routes.
Yeah, he's gonna be a big boy. So I picture it. But the funny thing is, once you become a dad, there's this weird, which obviously right now he's so young, but I can already see if he was all of a sudden woke up tomorrow and he was 15, it would be very hard to focus on myself because I'm already so excited about focusing on him
and invested.
I'm so excited. Not that I would give up my career and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's another gift that I've been able to, like, I love what I do, but now that I've become the father, I'm so excited to live my life for that child. But the best way I can do it right now is, like I said, just keep dipping that paintbrush and painting this masterpiece. The greatest thing I can do is another stroke of integrity, another stroke of character, another stroke of accomplishment, another stroke of failure, and then coming back from the setback, and that's the best thing that I can give him until he's old enough for me to actually physically give the gift of whatever I can give to him for whatever that he chooses. So
you're painting the framework for him to like illustrate himself into the legacy of your last name.
It's cool, man. It's so cool.
Dude, that's awesome.
That's cool.
All right, let's shift gears. Darkest time of your life. As he puts his coffee down, he's like, "Oh boy."
I was going to take a sip for that one. The darkest time of my life, honestly, is probably, I would say, so I've, up until this last year, I would have said a couple years ago, I went three fights in a row. I lost 3 fights in a row. 688 days I went without winning a fight.
Wow.
Which that's what we talk.
2 years.
Yeah, so what we talk about. It's almost 2 full years of being able to get back that loss that I just had. So I came out of college, got done with college in May of 2009, fought my first fight in August of 2009. So I just basically came right out of college, barely any mixed martial arts training, won my first fight, won my second, third fight, then signed with Bellator, won a couple fights for them, and then went on to the Bellator tournament. And then when you win the Bellator tournament, 3 fights in 3 months, I got the opportunity to fight Eddie Alvarez, who was the number 3 guy in the world. And I was literally, when I say no name, I was a no name. Like, people didn't give me a chance. I was undefeated, but I was so green. I was so young. I didn't have anything besides a big heart and some big cojones. Like, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to bite down my mouthpiece. And
That's so Midwest.
all right.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I don't care who you are.
Our
I don't care
stones are
if
bigger than our brain.
Yeah.
And that's why we're successful.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't care if you're 20. He was 22 and 2 at the time. I'm just like, I don't care. I wrestled in college. What I've done over the last 5 years is much more than what you've done over the last 5 years. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go in there and beat you. And I told him that. I told the media that. I told everybody that. There was
After winning, and this is after winning 3 or losing 3.
No, this was after winning 3. Sorry.
Okay.
And then I won that world title. So I got
Talk to me about that. What was that like the first time you became a world champion?
It was crazy because it was such a big fight, and I was the underdog. I was rocking coming in.
Major underdog.
Major, like 1,000.
What was your record?
To 1. I was 8-0 at the time. But so I maybe had a bright future, but I wasn't ready.
So it was a potential ranking.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's why you got the shot, because you showed some flair in the earlier fights.
Well, no. So we actually had, in mixed martial arts, normally it's promoter says this guy's going to fight this guy or this guy's going to fight this guy. But in Bellator, it was a true bracket format. There was 8 guys in a bracket.
Oh, you're talking about the tournament.
Yeah.
Okay.
8 guys in a bracket. Then it was fight. If you win that fight,
I like that
you get the world title.
Like, you earn it.
It's cool.
I like that.
It was cool. They don't do it anymore. But
why not?
I don't know. I think it's not sustainable unless you have a ton of people on your roster.
Because it requires a lot more fights to get to the apex.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of cool. It's kind of like a Super Bowl, though.
Yeah. So it was cool.
College football started to kind of adopt that model as much as they can.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they have playoff games now. Like when I played college ball, it was purely almost kind of like UFC promoter. Like, okay, we think based upon this record and their
voting.
potential. Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
That's cool.
Yeah, so nobody gave this young Michael Chandler kid a chance of beating Eddie Alvarez, who was the top 3 guy in the world.
I've heard that name, yeah.
And I went in there, and we had the fight of the year. It's on YouTube. It has almost 9 million views. It's got a ton of views because it's just a crazy fight. I go out there and almost knock him out in the first round, almost knock him out in the second round. He comes back, beats me up in the third round. In the fourth round, I finish him. But getting that win, it's so hard to understand what's going through your mind. What's going through your mind when you're walking out the tunnel in MetLife Stadium. You don't quite know because you're in this zone. You're in this
it's like the Twilight Zone.
It's in the Twilight Zone, so you don't really.
Your
autopilot
legs feel
takes
weird.
over.
Your muscles feel weird. My sensations.
Yeah.
Like your smell, your sight, your hearing.
Yeah.
Everything is different.
Yeah, you're just in the zone.
I can't imagine getting into a cage and what my senses.
Well, especially with the adrenaline. Adrenaline comes because people are like, doesn't that hurt?
That's what makes you feel different.
Doesn't that hurt? And I'm like, no, you don't really feel any pain, which is scary because it's bad because you just keep walking.
You don't know when to stop.
You're walking through punches and you're going to go. The only way you go out is if you literally go out. Or you literally get choked out or knocked out. So.
I love adrenaline.
It's crazy. It's crazy, right? So I win that fight. I won two more easy fights kind of after that. Finished them the first round. But I got so used to winning and so used to winning in the first round that I wasn't truly battle tested You know, I was so used to winning, and I didn't have a governor.
Like Mike Tyson.
Yeah, I mean,
People
just
didn't know whether or not
go.
he could go outside of 2 rounds.
And I was very similar to that. And then I lost my rematch with Eddie Alvarez, and then went and in that moment when I lost that fight, for some reason I told myself, Michael, I knew you weren't as good as they said you were. Michael, I knew you weren't as good as you thought you were. I knew, you know.
You talk about that more. The conversations in your head.
Yeah,
right?
every little, and we talked about it. I've grown out of it now, but I am the small guy from the small town who didn't have his hair under his armpits till he was almost 20 years old, who wasn't taught to do great things, who was never told that beyond that county line is a whole world for you to just go take and accomplish. You know, I was not taught that. You know, I was taught you should become a school teacher because they have good retirement benefits.
Right, safe.
It's like very safe.
Small town Midwest is about reliability and safety.
And safety. And I love my.
You're the furthest thing from that, because you could make like 6 figures, or you could make like $20,000. And when you were starting out, I'm sure it was a whole lot less than that.
Oh yeah, my first.
How much did you get paid for your first fight?
First fight was $500.
$500.
And then I had to pay for this. I pretty much lost money on that first fight.
Oh, I'm sure.
So,
your food alone for a week cost more than $500.
Exactly.
What was? And you don't have to answer this.
No,
what was the most that you got paid for a fight? Is that private information? Like, people don't know that? Because everybody knows our salary.
It is. I'll tell you.
You can tell me off camera.
I'll tell you off camera. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. VIP information.
VIP information.
Swipe up to check the news list, the newsletter.
But it's
so it's not public.
It's more.
It's not public knowledge.
It's
or
not.
you'd have to do a lot of digging.
Yeah, you got to do a lot of digging to actually get the real numbers.
You could Google
these days.
my name and type in like career earnings. It's like so public.
I know.
Which was like kind of cool when I signed like my first big deal, except for like it was cool for my ego. But then I was like, I would go out to dinner with people, and they would not even offer to pay because they know that like I just got blessed.
Yeah.
And I'm still the person to pay for everybody's meal, but it feels good when you go and somebody's like, "Hey, are you sure?" I got it, no big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things changed a little bit after I got paid.
Yeah. So it's you know, so that loss really immediately welled up all those things that I almost had been suppressing, as far as like I was confidently moving towards becoming more confident by just suppressing the like little guy from little town mentality, you know. But as soon as I lost that fight, immediately my brain went, "You're a little guy from little town. You were not supposed to be here. What the heck were you thinking?"
What was ingrained
we knew this guy who didn't believe in you. We knew he was right. You were just acting like he wasn't. And then went, and my next fight was a couple months later. Lost that fight. Next fight was a couple months later. Lost that fight. Lost 3 fights in a row. Went 688 days without a win, and really realized that was the moment that after that third fight, and the fight was actually here in San Diego. My wife and I were living here in San Diego. We brought back we had a little house in South Park, San Diego, down there.
I know it.
And we got home. We brought our suitcases. We put them in the living room right there, and we both sat down it was just a somber day. Lost my third fight in a row, and I actually got TKO'd. Like I didn't get knocked out, but like the guy was beating me. He was hitting me on the feet. The ref had to stop the fight, right?
So you got knocked out on your feet.
Kinda, yeah. And we got home. We sat down on the couch, and like we were just sitting there in silence. I'm like, what the heck do I say to this woman that I married her? I told her I was
feel like a failure.
Oh, huge failure. You know, like I didn't really tell her that, and like,
right.
but I did.
That goes back to like alpha.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like I need to just eat this, compartmentalize how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And go out and achieve and do.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? As good as a person as you are, and as great of a husband and a dad as you are, you still deal with that.
Yeah.
That's why like this is so powerful for people to hear.
Yeah. You're always. I feel like you're always gonna have it, and I think it's having the consciousness of understanding that you have it that can help you take a back seat and know that how you can deal with it in a better way. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear and I look over, and she's crying. I'm like. Because she was not fearful of the future. Yeah, I lost a bunch of money in the fights that you lose 3 fights in a row, you're essentially losing 3 paychecks, and if you add that up,
right.
I still look at that. I'm like, wow,
your
that's
lifestyle.
a lot. It's a lot of money. And So we weren't fearful of the finances, weren't fearful of the future, weren't fearful of this, that, the other thing. She was in so much pain knowing how I live my life and how I truly live like a champion. I truly treat my body like a champion. I truly treat my training like a champion. I do everything right. So therefore, why shouldn't he? He should be able to win because he deserves it that much.
Right.
So she knew the inner failure that I felt like. So it was eating her up inside. So
And she can do nothing about it. And you're not talking about it
Yeah.
because you don't want to alarm her.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're not talking about it with her alarms her because she doesn't feel comfortable to talk to you about, to offer you support.
Yeah. So it's just
So it creates a divide
Yeah.
in a marriage. And instead of, like, as men, you don't have to boo-hoo about it, but, like, just to be able to speak your truth and talk about what you're experiencing is the greatest gift that you can ever give your marriage. Your wife is not going to think you're weak. She's not going to think you're pathetic. You're not going to lose your alpha status or your man card.
Yeah.
Like, you're actually deepening that relationship by going somewhere that you've never gone before, and you're stretching the box of possibility in your marriage. So now you create that culture of, like, all right, let me protect this because, like, I'm protecting her by not saying this when she's going through something similar to what you're doing, and it could look a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Her instinct is his life is so busy. He's already got so much on his table or on his plate. Like, he's not going to care that, I tried to get my son into this school and he got rejected. And that, like, would crush a mother. It's crushed my wife before, and she doesn't want to bring that to me because I handle my own problems. I'm a man. And so she tries to do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
And it's lessons learned, dude. It's how we evolve.
it is. And that alpha is wide. You can be alpha, and so many people see you. The width,
Alpha can look
width,
a lot of different ways.
The width can, but the width of people too that see, like, oh man, that guy's an alpha. But that vulnerability and that authenticity is deep. Like that's.
It's almost kind of like a funnel.
Yeah.
Like, there's a million different, like, filters, like, oh, you did this, you're alpha. Oh, you did this, you're alpha. But the thing that really, like, filters people down to be right here, to be where you're at, and where I try to be for myself every day, and I try to be for my family, is really the filter. And you said it earlier, and when you're talking about the brushstrokes of the masterpiece that you're creating every day in your family and in your legacy, is integrity.
Yeah.
And it's honor, and it's accountability. Integrity in the decisions that you make and the man that you are, honor in the actions that you have and the thoughts that you have, and accountability. Accountability doesn't have to be like, people hear accountability and they think, oh, accountability is like showing up on time, doing what you said you were going to do. But it's accountability to other people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do this for you and actually doing it, or I'm going to make this call for you and I actually do it. I'm going to have you on my podcast and we actually do it. I get to build up accountability with other people, but the most important relationship is the accountability to yourself. And that goes back to what separates amateurs and pros. Amateurs do it because they're committed to it, regardless if people are watching, regardless if it's on Instagram or YouTube, regardless if you're underneath the lights in the cage, in the dark, in the shadows. You're going to do the right thing because you have integrity, you have honor, and you have accountability.
Exactly.
And it's just like those are the filters for my friends.
Yep.
Like, if I'm going to bring somebody into my home, I mean, putting them on my podcast, absolutely, because I really value this of what we've built. And I don't want to ever bring anybody on here and promote somebody's message or promote somebody's brand that doesn't have integrity, honor, and accountability. I don't care how popular they are, because at the end of the day, I'm creating a product and I'm creating content and I'm creating a bigger wave for that influencer, that if I don't believe in them, why am I doing this? So I have to go home at the end of the day, look in the mirror and be like, did I make decisions based upon integrity, honor, and accountability by having that person on my show, regardless if they end up getting us another 1 million subscribers?
Yeah.
Cool, great. I don't feel good about me.
Yeah.
I don't feel good about my mission.
Yeah. And that's really one of the keys to getting older, or getting deeper and deeper into your career and having more and more success is how do you continue to have success, but also stay within your lane of exactly who you are and being true to who you are, and that's why I'm very happy that I'm able to have that alter ego of, like, beat the heck out of people in a cage, but
Beyonce does that
but
too.
also know, but also know exactly. Me and Beyonce are very, very similar.
Yeah, you guys look like you're about the same height.
I know, right?
Listen to the laugh. Puke Hill.
That was a cardio. That was a cardio.
I was
cough
trying
right
to bust. I was trying to bust his balls, and then I coughed
so
up having
funny.
a lung.
So I think one of the other things too, going back to that vulnerability too, is so since I think I was always the small guy from the small town, and I was cute, like the girls didn't really like me. They just thought I was cute, like a little brother's cute, right? Which I don't want to say that I wasn't like an outcast or anything. Like girls like me, but for the most part, any of the ones that I liked thought I was like a little brother or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I also
stuck in the friend zone.
Yeah. No, I didn't.
Puke Hill.
Yeah, Puke Hill. But I think I was also the kind of guy who liked to make people laugh too. So I think one of my mechanisms for dealing with the insecurity and the failure that I was dealing with was making jokes about my losses. And I realized,
coping.
and I realized after my third loss, a long time after, like way too far into the loss streak, after so much damage had already been done to my mind, that was a way that I was continuing to reinforce the negativity in my mind. And because I would make jokes like, well, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose 3 in a row. And I'm like, it's a funny joke. But no, it's not a funny joke, because every time I said it, I was constantly reinforcing in my mind that I was a loser.
Yeah.
And it's fine. And that's one of the things, like, I am a loser. We're all losers. We will all lose, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how do you come back from those losses? It's like from loss to loss, and turning into the winner that you will become. I mean,
what was the springboard from that relationship that you're having with your wife, or the conversation on the couch?
Yeah, I mean, so from then, right after that, we both sat there and cried together, and we're like, what the heck do we do? And we had a good conversation, and I went and saw a sports psychologist, but he wasn't even a sports psychologist. He was actually like a marriage and family counselor, but he was just a psychologist, essentially. And I sat down and I started to visualize. We started my first time I had ever really visualized. Like, the crazy thing about me is I look back at my 20-something-year-old self as a mixed martial artist who was literally the top of his game. I was ranked number 3 in the world. I didn't even barely know how to wrap my hands physically. That's the physical part.
Just a freak.
Yeah. But on the mental aspect, I wasn't visualizing. I wasn't supplementing. I wasn't drinking protein shakes, amino acids. Like, I was just, because when you're young like that, you just recover and you're good.
You're bulletproof.
Yeah, you're bulletproof, So then it was at that moment when I really started taking things seriously. And I also realized, and it was a gift. Those 3 losses in a row, realizing that this sport that I'm now still a part of 5 years later, and making a lot of money since then and a lot of clout, and now I'm back up in the world rankings again, I've realized that it can be taken away from me. And I realized that the sponsors could drop me if they wanted to, which
Toyota of Escondido.
which none of them did. And that's one thing I will say too, just really quickly. The relationship was so much more important than the sponsorship to my sponsors. Monster Energy stuck with me through it all. American Ethanol stuck with me. Toyota of Escondido stuck with me through it all. And this is all through a guy who was top 5 in the world and then lost 3 fights in a row, and now he's back here. But through that time they could have, but they didn't, because of the relationship. And that's also, when you talk about painting that picture, man, you don't, the most important people in your life are not going to just drop you because you're not performing,
Right.
And I had gotten to a point with sponsors, and it sounds weird to call them sponsors, because sponsors sound so surface level.
I like partnership.
Exactly. I like partnership too, but we had that relationship.
It makes it feel less plastic,
less transaction-y, yeah. And that is the thing. It is so less about the wearing the logos and the sponsorships and the this and that. It's so much more about the relationships. And I don't say that to impress you or the audience. I say that to impress upon you that building the relationships in your life, in your vocation, whether it be your relationship with, obviously continuing your relationship with your family, but your closest of kin, but always having that reputation that, okay, Michael Chandler might have fallen short in that fight, or might have fallen short in that business deal, or fallen short there, but I know where his honor, his integrity, and his accountability.
I was literally about to ask it. I'm like,
that,
if you weren't a man of integrity, honor, and accountability, do you think they would have stuck beside you?
No, because I think in a roundabout way, it almost sounds manipulative to say it, but
No, that's
almost
how you are.
but
If they dropped you, you'd still be that way. So it's not manipulative. It's just being a good person also ends up giving you a longer leash to figure it
longer
out
leash.
because they know if you have integrity
that's
with them and you have an integrity with yourself, that's potential. Integrity is potential. Honor is potential. Accountability is potential.
and that's
Because you're not just going to throw in the towel.
and that's so crazy. Like, it really does sound manipulative to be like, well, if I'm a good person, it's going to be a lot harder for them to drop me. Like, if you talk about that, that is the truth, though. But I'm not a good person because I'm trying to secure my sponsors for longer. It's
you
just
are who you are.
But it's so great. Like, and maybe someone right now is listening to this saying, because I think people have these conversations with themselves, knowing that I made this decision or that decision, I screwed this person over, or I did this or I did that, and I don't feel like a good person. And nobody can just turn into a good person overnight, and being a good person is very subjective. It can be
It's failing forward every day.
Exactly.
I fail forward
Exactly.
every single day.
But there is absolutely no drawback of trying to become a better person, a better man, making the right decision, because we all know the right decisions. Life is pretty black and white. You know what's right, you know what's wrong, you know how you should conduct yourself day in and day out. And you'll never, ever, ever have to apologize to anyone or to yourself for trying to become the best person that you possibly can be. And then with that, like you said, good things are just going to keep happening. More and more blessings are going to keep happening.
So good, yeah.
And it's just part of life, which is awesome.
What scares you?
I think now that masterpiece being torn off the wall and fall on the ground, right? And because that's the thing, we hear it and it's overplayed. It takes years and years and years to build a great reputation, but it only takes 1 second to lose that whole reputation. And I think that's part of it. And that's why you always have to guard your heart and stay on guard every single day, knowing that everything that you have can be taken away by one bad decision. And not just a financial decision, not just that you could lose all your money or lose all your wealth or lose all your possessions, but losing that reputation. Oh, Michael, I thought he was such a good dude, but he did that one thing. I don't know if I can trust it.
It could happen tonight. You and I could go have a couple cold beers, and you could decide to drive home, or I could decide to drive home, and somebody pulls out in front of us, and it might not even be our fault. And unfortunately, they lose their life.
Yep.
Your sponsorships are gone.
Yeah.
Your career, like, you could get injured. Your career would be over.
Yeah.
Then you're laying in the hospital bed. You have no income. I mean, granted, you've got some other business dealings, but let's say you're just a fighter, and your entire identity and your ego is wrapped up in fighting, and your finances are wrapped up in fighting, and you make one decision, and it all goes away. Your money, your foundation, your reputation, because you were drinking and driving, and that's obviously, I've had a drunk driving before, dude. Like I said earlier, like, I've done it all. I've made a lot of silly mistakes in my life. Thankfully, nobody was injured. But who's to say that somebody could have been injured when I got my DUI? I never would have gone into the NFL. I never would have created the life that I've created for my family, the reputation that I've created for my family. And there could be people on here that are listening to this right now that made that mistake, that their life got drastically changed. But at the end of the day, you're left with the relationship that you have with yourself. And you don't have to let the past, regardless if that was a 3-time world champion or somebody that, involuntary manslaughter because they got a DUI and hurt or killed somebody, that doesn't make you a bad person. That made that decision that you made a bad decision.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've had to work on doing, is detaching myself from the result, meaning, I won a Super Bowl, and set some records and stuff. That doesn't make me a good person.
Yeah.
And I made mistakes just like I just described, and that doesn't make me a bad person or a good person. It's what happened, and it's how you deal with it, and the relationship that you have with yourself, and the consistency of that, and the congruency of what you say and what you do, that really will make you successful the same way it made you successful when you failed, and the people that were supporting you stayed with you because of the man that you are, not the knuckles of steel that you have.
Yeah, and that's,
you know what I mean?
Well, and I think that was one thing that helped me too, getting over the losses, because you can only lose so many times in a row before you're like, okay, well, maybe I am
A bum.
Maybe I am a bum,
Yeah.
But going from that setback to the next setback to continuing to build upon that failure to increase the faith that you're going to get out of this and you're going to end up being successful. And the sooner that you can realize that failure is an event and not a person, the quicker you can continue to move forward.
So good.
And it also just it also is so freeing too, because you're not defined by your wins and losses. Like you said, Super Bowl champion, that doesn't mean you're a good person. Horrible accident, this, that, or the other thing, horrible failure, that doesn't make you a bad person or a failure. And I think we get, especially this day and age when everything is broadcasted and everything's judged. Everything is judged. We love to either double click or not double click. We love to go thumbs up or thumbs down. Separating the person, the heart, the soul, separating all that from the accomplishments, the money, the lights, the accomplishments, the trophies, the awards, but also realizing that is the thing that catches the attention so that you can win the hearts and minds. And then on the other side, the failures and the setbacks, coming back from all of that to inspire and motivate people too. So it's just this huge circle that's so hard, and it's so easy to get caught up in the wrong the wrong avenues of why we're doing everything that we're doing these days.
I got one more question, but before I do, where can people get more Mike Chandler?
My Instagram is my main way that I get all of this out to people.
I actually message with you more in the DM than I do via text
we
message.
do, right? It's at Mike Chandler MMA. And so for me, I like to put my workouts out there and kind of have people. I like to do a little bit of fun stuff. Obviously like the handstand dumbbell stuff or the backflip stuff. It's that kind of stuff where I think on the one hand, I really am starting to realize that one of the reasons I was put on this earth, and you probably do, this resonates with you. One of the reasons I was put on this earth is to continue to show people what the human body is capable of. And I'm not like some Cirque du Soleil, like America's Got Talent stuff, but
you are a possibility. Let me give you a really eloquent way of what I try to show up as, and what I experience you as showing up as is possibility.
Yeah.
Like I want to show up as possibility for what the human body is capable of, in addition to what a father is capable of. Am I perfect? Am I the greatest? I'm not even the greatest dad that I know.
Yeah.
But I do wake up and I aim to be possibility for husband, possibility for father, possibility for business, possibility for somebody from Terre Haute, Indiana.
Yeah. Just want to be
possibility for what the body's capable of. Like I don't run at all. Dude, I ran like 350 meters up a 35% incline, and I don't run at all. That's possibility, because at the end of the day, like it comes down to grit.
Yep.
And it comes down to, I knew you were in better shape than me, but yeah, if we go do bench press, I'm going to bury you. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that doesn't challenge me.
Yeah.
I don't want to take you to the weight room and have you do Armageddon, because I'm going to crap all over you. I want to jump into the cage with you. Puke Hill, that was the cage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I knew I was going to be chasing a lion.
Exactly.
And that's what I want to do.
That's so cool.
Dude, you are possibility.
Well, and I think that's what it is too, because our society, although we keep having all these huge advancements in science and the medical field and going to space and doing all this kinds of stuff, I feel like we're increasing so much, but also our view of what the human potential is, for some reason, keeps going down and down and down. And people think, well, if he's able to do that, or he's able to look like that, he must be on PEDs, or if he's doing this, his dad must have been an athlete, or he must have this or must have that. We don't just think anymore that maybe that guy just worked extremely hard. Maybe that guy did do the right things.
More comfortable.
Yeah.
The conversation that you have with yourself is a more comfortable conversation if we can default into, well, it's because of, it's because he grew up in the Midwest. You know what? People in the Midwest, they're just harder workers.
Yeah.
That could be an excuse. He looks like that because, he takes steroids, or he made it into the NFL because he got a scholarship to college. They don't want to think about, you don't want to have a conversation in your head that maybe it's because he wakes up every single morning at 4:30 He doesn't have to. He does that. That's his routine. He doesn't do it because he feels like it. He does it because he's committed to it. And it's the same thing that goes for the way that you show up for your wife and your kids. I'm sure there's some days that you come home and your face is bruised and your joints hurt.
Yeah.
But your wife needs your support. She needs you to actively listen. Or your son has had a bad day, and maybe your wife needs a break.
I think that was the other thing too, is being put on this earth to show people what the human body is capable of, but also to the young, 11-year-old kid who maybe wants to go into fighting, that he doesn't have to be a fighter like some of the fighters we've seen in the past that are just fighters and they're rough and tumble. These guys, he can be a great fighter and a great father and a great husband. If Michael Chandler can do it, and if I want to be both of those things, and Michael Chandler was able to do it, I can do it too, and like we said, not to say that I'm the best fighter in the world, the best father, the best husband, but I'm striving to be those three things and the greatest of those things that I possibly can be. So if there's just a couple young kids out there who want to be fighters but also give themselves permission to be a great father and a great husband someday, because I did that and I paved the way for that, that's exactly what I would love my legacy to be.
Dude, I love that. And I'm thinking about that. You actually alluded to the last question I wanted to ask you, but I'm going to ask you again. It's like I'm wearing a hat that says Best Dad. Yeah. And we giggled about it before we hit record. I bought this hat for myself. Not because I think I am the best dad. Is every time I pick up my phone, I go selfie mode for Snapchat or Instagram Live, or I see a picture of myself, or I look in the mirror and I see Best Dad. I know what I'm working for. This is not like a trophy for me. This is like a reminder of what I'm working towards. Yeah. Last question. What's your legacy?
I think the legacy keeps changing, obviously. Like if you would ask me 5 years ago, 3 years ago, but now that you're a father, you're a husband, like it's not my father, I'm a husband, it changes. But I think the biggest thing when I look back, that I think there's so many, and not to make it all about men, but like small guy from a small town, there's so many people that are small little guys or little girls from a small town. They weren't supposed to do anything. There wasn't that much expected out of them. But because of this inner yearning that they had, and because they knew that God had them in the palm of their hand their whole life, and each new relationship and each new step kept continuing to open doors, that they were able to accomplish great things. And it was just that if you work extremely hard, you surround yourself with the best people possible, and you operate with honor and integrity and accountability, that nobody can take anything away from you, because at the end of the day that you put everything you possibly can into every single thing that you did. And right over your head is my favorite quote of all time: to give anything less than your best is a sacrifice to give. And God has given me so many amazing gifts, having 2 capable arms and 2 capable legs, that if I don't give every single thing that I have, every ounce of my being, into what God has called me to do, then I'm sacrificing those gifts that I've been given, and just living a life that is inspired and inspiring. And now being able to paint that picture and paint that masterpiece for my son, who will listen to this someday, and he will talk to my peers, and he will talk to my family, and he will talk to even just random fans someday about, who Michael Chandler was to them. And that, I hope that just makes his heart skip a beat. I hope it gets a little twinkle in his eye, and he gets a little pep in his step, knowing that that man that they're talking about absolutely adores him and absolutely loves every single heartbeat since January 23rd, 2017, when he was born. So it continues to change. But as a husband, a father, as an athlete, as a fighter, I just want to be known as the guy who was a small guy from a small town that was able to do big things because he kept believing in himself, and he tried to operate with integrity.
So good. I'm listening to you speak, and I already was kind of like, what is the theme of the podcast that we did? Thank you for sharing all that. Of
course.
But I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, it's like to me, you are a possibility. And when you're talking about your legacy, like your legacy is to represent possibility, no matter if you're from a small town, no matter if you're short, no matter if you're, black, white, green, yellow, it doesn't matter. Like, you are representing possibility in the most alpha way. That's the name of this podcast, guys. alpha responsibility with 3-time world champion, MMA fighter, father, husband, man of God, Michael Chandler.
I like that.
how that sounds.
I like that.
Dude, thank you, man. This was fun, man. This is probably my favorite podcast that I've done on my show.
Come on, man.
I mean
like that.
It's been like effortless.
That's some good ones.
Typically when I have people on here, I like prepare all these notes, and it was just, I don't know, man. It's the way that you show up, like the possibility that you show up as on social media that made me just want to do this so much more relaxed than the way that I'm doing it, because I'm still kind of trying to figure out. I've only done probably 40 podcasts, and I'm still trying to find, like, I'm a rookie as far as like how I want to show up.
Yeah.
I know I want to show up in integrity, honor, and accountability, but what I want the show to feel like, I hope every show after today feels like this. But it will be hard to find with people that will be so relaxed and easy and effortlessly just vulnerably sharing and representing possibility the way you do. So if you love this podcast, I freaking loved sitting through it and learning and getting you an opportunity to open up to the people that support our show. I would love, and I know Michael, I'm not even going to ask him if he'll do it. I'll wrestle him if he says no. But I would love to get people's feedback, like on Instagram story. I would love for people to take a 10, 15-second video, selfie video, and tag Michael on Instagram and tag me. And every time I get tagged with that, like, I'm reposting that on Instagram story, because as cool as it is to get DMs, and I do love DMs about, the impact maybe a post had or a video that I created or, a blog that I wrote. I love to see people, and I love to hear the tonality in their voice, and I love video. I mean, every time I send you a text message, it's a video.
Yep.
Very rarely is it actual words, because I love to connect with people, and I do that for the people that I really love. But I would love to get some Instagram videos of, people's experience of what their biggest takeaway was from the show. So tag me on Instagram story. If you haven't subscribed to the show, do yourself a favor, because I feel like this show could be a paradigm shift for where we go, because I just love talking about being a dad. And we've had, like, all of the high achievers that we had on here have been good dads, but talking about fatherhood was like, it was so effortless with you, because, dude, like, you get me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, like, I get you, and I think that's why this show has been what it's been. So I would love for you to share this with your friends and tag us on Instagram story if this is something that's been huge for you. Michael, is there anything that you want to leave our friends with?
No, thank you for the opportunity. And I think, the coolest thing for me, because I've been, ever since that day in Florida, since we met and we did that show together, it's been like, when I talk about surrounding myself with the right people and being inspired, I saw not just the man, the physical man that you are. Obviously, as an alpha, I'm attracted to that, because I'm like, that's what I want to be. That's what I want to look like. But even just hearing the depth, because you're wide with your alpha, but you're also deep, and you're not afraid to get deep. And I think that authenticity, it's so important to, if we sat here today and we never talked about fighting, we never talked about football, it would have felt just as awesome, you know. And I think peeling back those layers that we all wear, that armor that we're constantly wearing, peeling that back and going deep and being vulnerable, that's where the real strides are made. And that's how men don't just become better men, they become better leaders, better athletes, better businessmen, better in every single way. That's how we become the best dad. That's how you can wear the hat, and that's how.
See if I can go to Target and find
like
another one of these
I like
for you.
That, but just if I can operate with as much authenticity and honor, integrity as you can, man, I'll be doing pretty good. So I appreciate you, and
I feel the same way. I feel like I'm chasing you,
it's
and
cool,
you feel
man.
like you're chasing me.
But that's what you got to have. Like you got to have these people in your life. You're like, dang it, he's doing this, and I should be doing that.
I'm capable of that.
I'm capable. I know I can do that. And that's
awesome,
why these things are so powerful, because there is no excuse for not being inspired every single day. Your parents and your grandparents, they never had the opportunity to hop on and listen to this, hear this, see these things on social media and all that kind of stuff. They had to read it in the newspaper, and most of that stuff was negative, so there's no excuse for not being inspired every single day. So thank you for being that inspiration.
Dude, thank you, man. I accept that. It feels good to be able to get like acknowledgement from a person that I have the same opinion towards. Like I feel like I'm chasing you. So dude, that's special for me. It's something I cherish, man. I appreciate that. For real, last question.
Yes.
So the reason I was asking about the people that you surround yourself
Oh
with.
yeah.
May 11th, Chicago.
Oh yeah.
I want to be backstage. I won't say anything.
Ooh.
I'll stand in the corner. I want to watch your evolution to getting into the cage.
Dude, that would be awesome. That would
Can
actually,
I do that?
We can make that happen. Let's do it.
I had to put him on the
If
spot.
that's-
I wasn't
No,
going to ask him
absolutely.
afterwards.
No, I like that. No,
'Cause
absolutely.
I'm like, well, listen, he just said all these really nice things about me, and he said he wants good people around him. That was
Yeah,
a pretty
see?
good. So can I come backstage?
Yeah.
Dude, that'd
Dude,
be
we
awesome.
Can make that. We could definitely make that. It's cool, man, because it's like, you know, it's like when I
Do
see
the video guys, Guy
yeah,
and Nico, are
I
like,
know, they're like,
raising their hand
we
off
got
camera.
to get it on video, so you know. But you know, like
It's
when I
true.
look
It didn't
at this
happen unless
video,
it's on Snapchat.
yeah, when I look at this video, this picture of you kind of back there, like what the backstage feels
Yeah.
like when you're about to play in the Super Bowl. It's cool to see that evolution of the backstage, and you know, because it's going to be different than you think it is probably, but it's also going to be there's going to be other things that are like so similar to being backstage.
That's why I want to
to
experience it, because I know my process, and I got to watch 52 other teammates all have different processes. And I've never been backstage. I've been backstage and met guys, but I've never had the opportunity to just be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
And just watch like an hour and a half, maybe 3 hours of their mental preparation, you know, their interactions with loved ones. And like, I just think that would be cool. Plus,
dude.
I'll come out and I'll carry a gigantic American flag when we're
Yes,
coming down.
yes. There you go. Now we're talking.
Dude, I love you, man. This
I
has
love you,
been freaking really, really cool, man. So, guys, share this with your friends. We'd love an Instagram story. We'll be reposting those. And, Michael, I just want to thank you, man. I know there's a lot of places you could be right now and a lot of things that you could be doing. And you're with me right here with us right now.
That's right.
Dude, I'm going to put you on the spot. Pray us out of here, man.
Father God, we thank you for this opportunity that we had today. Lord, we just ask that these words, this video, touches people where it needs to be, where they need to be inspired and motivated. Lord, we just thank you for the blessings that you have given us, both Steve and I, as men, as fathers, as leaders, as husbands. Lord, as we ask, Lord, that you continue to challenge us. You continue to give us opportunities that stretch us outside of our comfort zones, and that Lord, even when we fall short, Lord, you are constantly shining upon us, and you are proud of us, and we are loved, and we are cherished by you and by so many. So, Father God, we just ask, and Lord, I just pray right now for Steve, and I pray for every single thing that he has going on in his life, and every single day, and every single way, Lord, that he will continue to show up as the Steve that you have called him to be, Lord. And I thank you for the Weatherford podcast, Lord, that every single ear that is within earshot to hear will be inspired and will be motivated, in every single moment here moving forward will constantly continue to grow and be fruitful for so many people, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
So good, dude. So good. We'll see you guys next week.
Love you guys.